Are an anxious person, and that's manifesting itself in, say, neurotic overanalysis.
There was one particular part of my body that was
Professor
needed.
Albert Einstein helped discover the atom bomb.
I believe that Islam is the only non-Christian faith.
Lweirday Experience.
IT Experience.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lweirday Experience podcast. In this episode, we have a new experience. Our experience is about cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is considered as one of the most important fields in the IT area. Let's say that most of the companies in the world are more focused on the cybersecurity side, which means they should ensure the security of their departments. And of course, we have a guest. Our guest is a professional advisor in cybersecurity. So he has a good experience in this field and is going to share it with us. Taher Amine ELHOUARI, welcome to your podcast.
Hello, thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation and thanks for having me in this wonderful initiative of a podcast.
You're welcome. Well, as you know, in our podcast, we have like a set of questions that we have to ask to our guest to discover his experience. Well, for our listeners who might not be familiar with you, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe to hear about your career, for example, and your daily routine, and some of the key achievements you have made in cybersecurity field.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it would be more appropriate to introduce myself first and then go straight into my career, so people listening to our podcast will have a grasp of the background that I'm coming from. So my name is Taher Amine ELHOUARI, like my buddy just said. I currently serve as a Chief Information Security Officer and Head of Risk Security and Compliance at an Algerian regulator in the fintech, e-banking, and e-payment industry called GE Monitic, the institution that governs, let's say, Algeria's interbanking payment ecosystem. Beyond that, I'm also involved in multiple other organizations, such as founder and CEO of EKC Group, a consulting company operating in Algeria, the UK, and the USA, focusing on everything related to information security, cybersecurity, auditing, training. I also divide, let's say, my time to non-profit and volunteering initiatives, such as the OWASP Algiers chapter and the Cloud Security Alliance Algeria chapter, where I serve as the founding president. I also contribute as a global advisory board member at EC Council for penetration testing and for their CCSO program, and also accredited auditor and certified trainer for other organizations and, let's say, certification bodies. But in terms of my career, like you mentioned, the early beginning was purely and very, very technical. So my work was more like security assessment, security operations, pen testing, let's say, aligned as an example with the PTS methodology, incident handling, digital forensics, and so on. I honestly loved the hunt, the technical puzzle, if you know what I mean. But after a certain time, we cannot always focus only on the technicalities, because information security is much more bigger than that. So
of course.
I realized quickly, like, technical fixes in some way do not scale. Like, let me give you an example so I can clarify. I could exploit, as an example, 20 vulnerabilities this week, but if the governance and the culture of the security people and the overall collaborators didn't change, then obviously the same 20 vulnerabilities would resurface the next quarter. So that was kind of my story behind that transition, like from, let's say, from a keyboard warrior to some sort of systems builder in some sort. So today, let's say, a typical day for me balances in some sort 3 dimensions, notably governance, strategy, and operations. So when I say governance, let me give you an example, like reviewing the security posture program with metrics or KPIs, key performance indicators, aligned to, as an example, the ISO 27004 for everything related
We are
to
going just to
measurements,
discuss.
defining KPIs, and
Yeah,
so on.
for sure.
Absolutely.
We are going just to
And
discuss about it. Like we are going just to discuss in details about this kind of certificate. So if
yeah,
you are just
obviously, yeah. I'm not, of course, but I'm trying to describe, like the career that I'm having today and how I balance between strategic things and technical things.
yeah,
So
for sure.
if I give you an example in terms of strategy, it's always, like being a director or a CISO, it's much more of meetings and so on, So
Yeah.
meetings with executives, with ministries, where you have to translate these vulnerabilities and so on into business risks. So like trying to be compliant with the regulations. As in Algeria, as an example, we have the 1807 law, which concerns the protection of personally identifiable information. So it's more like data protection, data privacy. It's similar to the GDPR in Europe. And also in terms of operations, it's all about staying hands-on, like validating detections, reviewing red team findings, mapping, let's say, supply chain risks, and so on. So to summarize, my day is a constant blend between the ISO auditor's rigor, the CISO strategy, and that ethical hacker's curiosity. So that's all.
Well, that's a great
It's too
job.
much.
Like, so yeah, I see. Well, so we're gonna just pass to the second question, and the second question say like, was there one specific certification or learning journey that had a significant like impact on your career, or fundamentally changed the way you think about security? What do you think?
This is an interesting one.
Yeah.
Um,
I know that you
actually-
have. I know that you have like, just to the audience, because they should know that you have like several certifications. It's around maybe 250 certification related to the or referred to the field of cybersecurity. So could you just give us like one specific certification or two maybe to describe like
actually that's right. Up to this day, I hold around, let's say, 240 certifications. There is a blend between certificates and certifications, but there is only one. Well, there are multiple ones, like you said, but I always mention only one, the CISSP, the Certified Information Systems Security Professional by the International Information Systems Security Certification Consortium, or known as the ISC2. Honestly, this was the only certification that completely kind of changed my mind in terms of how I see information security and cybersecurity. But for the record, I did not start with certifications. Like, I hold around today, I have over, let's say, 15 years of experience, and I only started doing certifications like in the past 5 years and up to this day. So the 10 years before that, or let's say the decade before that, was juggling between different programs, roles, and so on. So the CISSP kind of gave me some sort of a mapping and at the same time a reorganization of everything I know inside of my head. So it gave me some sort of a breadth. It kind of forced me to think of security as governance, risk, and compliance, while aligning it with other standards, laws, regulations, frameworks, and so on. To summarize it, it gave me the language to speak to boards, because the CISSP is the sort of certification that kind of blends between both technicalities of the field, but at the same time, the strategic things of the field, like managing a whole posture of an organization, developing your own cyber program inside of an organization, and so on. I always prefer this certification and I highly recommend it. And what made it so special for me is, if I'm allowed to share some background about that, when I was so young, absolutely, when I was like so young, starting out in the field, it was more like a dream for me, because I still remember back in the days when I was Googling and going inside forums, having discussions with experts, professionals, and so on, they all say that the CISSP is the gold standard of information security. Like, if you have it, it's more like you have a PhD, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So it was like extremely important for me to achieve it. And nowadays, I'm proud to say that I am the youngest holder worldwide of this ISC2 CISSP certification. And at the same time, also a subject matter expert inside ISC2, working with a team of other experts who are nowadays developing the questions of the exam of that certification and so on. So it really means a lot to me. This is a very special one for me.
Well, that's great, since like you have like this kind of CISP. That's it. CISP, just for the audience to know about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this question is about like the certification and how it has like this impact on your daily, let's say, life. Well, now we have another question, and this question is more about companies. So we are going to discuss about like companies and how they deal with security, etc. So can you just explain how modern companies are building security into the development process from the very beginning, and not just as like an afterthought? Yeah.
This is a very interesting one because, you know, like nowadays the majority of like security risks and vulnerabilities come from the SDLC process when it is not that secure, and this is why we have the SSDLC. So this is a concept that comes from something that we call in the industry security by design. And security by design nowadays is something that is no longer optional. If we refer as an example to some data breach reports, there is one by EBM, Cost of Data Breach Report. It found that fixing vulnerabilities in design, like in the design phase, costs 30x less than fixing them after deployment. It's like building a house. If you start building that house the appropriate way, then everything will be fine. But if you start building it like in its basic definition, if you start building it in the wrong way, exactly, like then obviously it will cost a lot to fix. And that's why companies started adopting this security by design concept. And if we do a certain mapping between that and your question, then we will end up talking about the SSDLC or the secure SDLC alongside the DevSecOps. So SDLC is the software, and some people refer to it as system development lifecycle as a process. And we also have the SSDLC, the secure software development lifecycle, which is guided nowadays by multiple standards, frameworks, and so on that will help us build software or systems based on security in mind. So we do have some examples like the ISO 27034, which provides the guidelines and the best practices in terms of governing application security. We also have the OWASP, the Open Worldwide Application Security Project, that are much focused on application security. They have multiple frameworks such as the SAM or the ASVS, the SAM that refers to the Software Assurance Maturity Model, and it is one of the most famous OWASP frameworks. We also have the ASVS, the Application Security Verification Standard, and we also have NIST, the American National Institute for Standards and Technologies. They developed a whole framework dedicated to secure software development lifecycle. It is called the SSDF, Secure Software Development Framework, based on the special publication, if I'm not wrong, 800-218 or 19. So to summarize at a granular level, we have the design part. The design part where you have to establish the certain baseline. But before that, we do have the requirements, because the regular SDLC process, it's about 5, and some people call it 6 phases. If we use 5, we have requirements, design, development, testing, and deployment. So we need to integrate security in each single phase inside that process. So in the requirements phase, we will establish, as an example, we have to be compliant to ISO 27034 or NIST SSDF as an example. And then comes the design part, where we have to appropriately do, let's say, a risk assessment, a threat model using a framework like Stride, PASTA, DREAD, or whatsoever.
Yeah.
Then we have the development phase, which is the coding phase. So we need to train our developers to at least take in their approach and in their mindset the basics of the OWASP top 10, the top 10 most exploitable vulnerabilities and most significant risks in terms of web development, API development, mobile development, and so on. And then we'll have to enforce the SAST and DAST and other security solutions. Then comes the development and the testing. So build and test. We have to integrate, as an example, infrastructure as a code scanning when we are using cloud environments. So Terraform, Kubernetes, and so on. We can also refer to CS benchmarks and force code signing as an example. And then we'll have to do some API fuzzing as an example, or penetration testing aligned with the framework that we mentioned, the ASVS. And this will leave us with the release part, or the deployment, and the operation. So require SBOM as an example, the software bill of material. We can refer to the CISA guidance, the US Cyber Agency. And then comes the operations as the final phase of security assessment and secure configuration, where we have to apply some sort of continuous monitoring alongside runtime protection. So culturally, security must be treated as quality. Like, it has to be integrated from the very beginning of any project. So if I refer to my experience, I have seen organizations enforce the no build passes unless security checks pass, but that policy alone reduced only critical production vulnerabilities, let's say, by 50 or 60%. So this is not enough. We need to integrate the security aspect in every single phase alongside the software development lifecycle.
Yeah. Yes, like there are like bunch of information here. Like I've just thrown a bunch of information regarding this like question about companies and security, etc. Well, now we're gonna dive into another side of security, which is ethical hacking or ethical hackers. We know that ethical hackers are considered as the good guys, right or not? I think because the word hacker is mostly like considered as like a bad side of cybersecurity, if we can say. It's like the enemies of security guys, like, let's say, or security teams. So from your experience, since you are, I think, a red teamer, is that right? Yeah, since you are. I used to be in red teaming, then I switched to blue teaming, then I became more of like a purple team operator. But but we need to start by definitions, like you are mentioning, because for the record, a hacker is not a bad guy. For real. A hacker is a person who thinks outside the box, who can develop something, who can introduce new features, who can like push something to the next level. And this is a good thing in terms of continuous improvement, in terms of development, and so on. But unfortunately, due to movies, news, the media, social media, and so on, they started calling hackers as the bad guys. So that's it.
Exactly. In the cybersecurity industry, we were obliged to start using ethical hacker as a term to refer to the white hats, to the red team operators, to the penetration testers who are helping companies, organizations, and nations to secure their environments. So ethical hackers are guided by scope, they are considered the safe harbor, and they use certain ethics. So if I speak as an ethical hacker, we have to simulate adversaries, we have to simulate like real attackers, real cyber criminals, and the real bad guys using some frameworks dedicated to that, such as the MITRE attack. But our final mission is to strengthen defenses. So if I, let's say, uncover a vulnerability in your own system, I'm going to need to come up with the recommendations and best practices in order to mitigate this vulnerability and then take my security posture to the next level. So some of the common attacks that we face nowadays in terms of hacking, ethical hacking, and so on, it's social engineering, because social engineering is a whole science dedicated by its own self. If we speak like strategically, information security and cybersecurity, they have to be applied using three things called the PPT process: people, process, and technology, which means I need to have aware and very aware people who can know that this email is a phishing email, who can detect that this message is weird, it's not legitimate, and so on. In terms of processes, I need to define governance based alongside based on best practices, processes that will help me manage this whole thing. And then comes the technological part, which is, like firewalls, antiviruses, EDR, and so on. So we need these three things in order to have a certain posture in terms of security. And of course, based on the famous CIA triad: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So if I can give you an example, we can we can invest hundreds, if not thousands of millions of dollars in terms of technology and secure technology. But if our own users and our own citizens and our own employees are still not aware of the security risks of this and that, then the technology side will or cannot resist, let's say, the ignorance of the human being. So that's why social engineering is one of the most famous attack vectors nowadays. And we have seen subcategories like
social engineering is like, how do you interact with let's say the victim. Let's say how do hackers interact with victims and, for example, get some password or something like that. So this is the meaning of social engineering, because there is another term which is reverse engineering, which means that you are dealing only with the software, but social engineering, which means you are dealing with people, like psychologically. Indeed. With people.
Well, social engineering, to simplify it, it's about hacking the human mind. It's like hacking the person themselves instead of hacking technologies. Because like you said, if we go to technologies, then we have reverse engineering, which is about reversing software, hardware, and so on. But social engineering is about exploiting the trust of the human being, exploiting the confidence, trying to put some pressure on persons to give you like passwords, to give you their credit card information, and so on. Other attack vectors that are happening nowadays, we have privilege escalation, lateral movement, and so on. I'm gonna probably be speaking some technicalities here, like some attacks like Kirby roasting, pass the hash, pass the ticket, and so on.
This is like another question. So this is we are going just to discuss about. But you can, for example, give us like some or highlight some examples regarding this aspect, if we can. You can.
Ethical hackers do use, I'm trying to pass a message after all of this, like ethical hackers do use the same tools, techniques, and procedures and tactics as well of the real hackers or the real cyber criminals, which we call crackers and not hackers.
Okay. Well, here we discussed about like ethical hackers and, for example, red teamers and etc. We have another question. And this question is about your journey. So now we are going to talk about your journey in cybersecurity field. So what is like, or what are the most complex challenges that you have faced in your, let's say, career? And did you face like any bad guys, let's say, in your field? This is like the most.
that's a good one.
This is like kind of most considered topic in cybersecurity that I didn't like face any before, like any cybersecurity guy who said like I faced hackers or something. Mostly they focus on security, but this question like come to my mind every time. Like, did like cybersecurity guy or you as an expert in this field face something like that?
Well, in fact, yes. Let me explain. Well, like I shared in a couple of minutes ago, I used to be very, very technical, which means I used to deal with technicalities. So me personally, I have witnessed real-time attacks. I have worked on real-time incident response operations facing real cyber criminals, real like ransomware attacks, and so on. But if I speak the truth and be completely transparent and honest, the hardest challenges are really cultural and organizational. They are not technical. Let me explain. The technicalities or the technical side of the industry is based on a certain logic, and that logic we are raised with it, like 1 + 1 = 2. There is no other answer. There is a logic behind that. But when it comes to the cultural and the organizational aspect, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of factors that will change the context from one scenario or one organization to another. Like attackers innovate so fast, but unfortunately, organizations are moving at a very slow pace, constrained by like legacy systems, budgets, and also resistance to change. And all of these factors will impact your overall security posture a way or another. So yes, I have faced real adversaries. As an example, one ransomware case on a very critical infrastructure was a turning point. It was a life-changing experience. Containment required isolating networks, shutting the lateral spread, restoring backups, and so on. But the true battle was crisis leadership. Like executives under pressure, CEOs, directors, and so on, they were under pressure. Regulators demanding compliance reports, whether they are agencies or authorities. And customers were losing trust in real time. Like nowadays, everything is digital based, like everything is digitalized. So if a company gets hacked or something, then obviously customers, consumers, partners, and clients will be in a certain fear, panic, and obviously they will end up losing trust. And this is where international standards and best practices come into place, like the ISO 27035 for everything related to information security incident management, ISO 22301 for business continuity converge. And it reinforced my belief, like alongside tabletop exercises that must be included, not just relying on like SOC operations solely, and also legal, like business leaders and so on. So we need to understand that information security is not only IT. It is an organizational survival because it's about protecting the information in itself, whether it is in a digitalized system or not, whether it is digital or paper based. You feel me? So when you understand this bigger picture in terms of information security, like your awareness, you kind of become more aware, but at the same time you feel like it was a shock because like when you are starting in the field, you only think that cybersecurity is like computers, servers, and so on. But cyber is not the appropriate one. We are talking information security, so the mission is way more bigger and the challenges are outside the technical scope. So these things will become like really, really complex over time, and the more that you deal with different countries, different cultures, different organizations, the more that your bigger picture will be like more, let's say, more wider than before.
Yeah. Oh, like as usual, so many information here. Oh.
I'm trying my best to be as helpful as possible.
I do see like that. So, we have another question here. Well, we are going to talk about the goals of the three teams. Like there are three teams here. We have the red, we have the blue, and we have the purple, which is a mystery team because I don't really have like information about this team. So can you just give us, let's say, a description or explanation about these like three teams?
Of course. Actually, this comes from a very old history related to military operations, because for the record and for the information of everyone's listening to us, these colors like red, blue, and so on come from like military operations, because the majority of the concepts that we use in cybersecurity come from military, like the military side or the military.
So you mean that like the military field has implemented this kind of cybersecurity first?
Yes.
Like, it started like from the military field.
Actually, it's the inverse, because these concepts that we use nowadays in cybersecurity come from the military operations.
Yeah.
Like we have red teaming, blue teaming, reconnaissance, information gathering, and so on. These concepts come from intelligence agencies, from military departments, from military institutions, and so on. So if we focus that on red teaming, blue teaming, and purple teaming, we need to understand something. Like when we talk about the technical aspect of cybersecurity, we do have offensive security and defensive security. So offensive security is everything related to attacking an organization in order to uncover its vulnerabilities and weaknesses. And when we talk about defensive security, we are talking about protecting, defending, reacting, responding, and so on. And from this, let's say from this base, we started having red teams and blue teams. So red teams are the offensive security guys, and blue teams are the defensive security guys. So red teamers, they are the ones who emulate adversaries, who validate the real world impact, who simulate like techniques, who run penetration testing, who do social engineering simulations, and so on, in order to uncover the different weaknesses, whether they are related to people, processes, or technologies. But when we talk about blue teaming and the defensive aspect of the cybersecurity industry, then, like I said, these guys, they are the ones who defend our institutions, who monitor cyber attacks, who detect cyber events, and respond to cyber incidents. And then comes the purple teaming, which is more of a concept or an approach more than a team in its form. So when we say purple teaming, to simplify, it is the structured collaboration between the two teams. It's like the blend between red and blue. And in fact, the purple color, as you all know, it is the blend of
Mixed.
red and blue.
Yeah. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it's a mix between.
Exactly. So purple is where maturity accelerates. The red transparently executes attack chains or MITRE attack chains, and the blue tunes detections live and does the detection engineering. And then the outcome of this whole operation is measurable. We reduce the MTTD, we improve detection coverage, and so on. I have seen, as an example, organizations have their MTTD within one quarter by embracing purple as a philosophy. And there are some frameworks and best practices based on that. So it's not red versus blue. No, it is a feedback loop. It is a collaborative approach between the two. And that's where purple teaming becomes live in an organization.
Wow, that's great. So there's like there is a difference between them. Like I was thinking that the
Absolutely.
purple is Well, let's continue here. So what's the next question? So we're gonna pick a question here about two types of networks. We have, I think, ICS and SCADA. So why is the security of ICS and SCADA? ICS means industrial control systems, and SCADA is like SCADA networks is, I think, supervision, control, and SCADA, what does it mean exactly? Supervision?
The supervisory control and data acquisition.
Data acquisition. Thank you. So different and in many ways more critical than traditional IT security. So why is this, let's say these two types are so different?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Actually, it is not more critical than IT, or IT is more critical than OT, because in nowadays we do have IT and we have OT. So we have information technology and we have operational technology. And the things that you are referring to, like ICS and SCADA and so on, they are part of OT. But the priorities change between the two. So IT, as an example, it's like telecommunication systems, banking systems, and so on. And these things are extremely critical, and they are considered critical infrastructure in any country in the world. But the same thing goes for OT. We have industrial plants, we have oil and gas, water facilities, nuclear facilities, and usually these things fall under the OT side. So we have to understand the OT first. OT contains something called the IACS, or the Industrial and Automation Control System, and it's referred to ICS, Industrial Control Systems. Inside those industrial control systems, we have SCADA, and inside of it we have like PLCs,
There is like
DCS,
DCS, yeah.
DCs, and so on. Yeah, absolutely. So ICS and SCADA is like fundamentally different. In IT, as an example, when we talk about information security, we talk about the CIH, right? The confidentiality, integrity, and availability. But when it comes to OT, it's flipped. Safety and availability becomes first. We need to care about the safety of the human being because we are talking operational machines. Like, sorry for the term, but these machines might kill a human being. It's not about exposing data or hurting the reputation and so on, or stealing pictures and videos.
You mean the industrial machines? That's it.
Exactly. OT is all about industrial machines. So the safety and the downtime is not like just lost revenue. It's blackouts, it's water contamination, even loss of life, if you know what I mean. So the challenges include like legacy systems, vendor dependencies, and so on. So the best practices in terms of ICS and SCADA security, we have the ISA/EC 62443. It is the CSMS, the Cybersecurity Management System dedicated for OT security. And we do have some NIST and other references like the NIST.
We will discuss about them like the next. Yeah, the next question is about like this. Aggregate. Yeah,
absolutely. So in the OT security aspect, we have something called the Purdue model, which is all about isolating OT from IT. We do have also like governance structure specific to that and so on. We do have like the huge cyber incident that happened in the past years, which is called Stuxnet. It is extremely famous. It demonstrated how a malware could jump air gaps and manipulate industrial PLCs. So ACS or industrial control systems are not only theoretical, it is about like national security as much as IT security.
Good. So there is a difference between both let's say both.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the types of let's say securities. Well, now we are going to talk about the standards. I know that you have an experience with like different standards, and can you just briefly explain to us standard, for example, ISO 27001, and there is like a standard called NIST, which is NIST, and even like SOC2. If you can just briefly give us like a description or explanation of these three types.
Wonderful. First of all, we need to explain that this is part of the GRC world of information security. GRC stands for governance, risk management, and compliance, because when we talk about laws, regulations, and standards, we often talk about compliance. But before diving into, like you mentioned, ISO 27001, NIST, SOC 2, or whatever, we need to explain and understand that there is a difference between a standard, a framework, a regulation, and a law or an act. And usually standards and frameworks are the same or under the same category. And then we have laws, regulations, and acts under the same category. Why? Because standards and frameworks are voluntary based. Like if you want to implement them, then this is in your own advantage. There is no penalty or jail or like something to pay or whatever. But when we talk about laws, regulations, acts, and so on, then we are talking about something obligatory. Like you have to implement it.
It's mandatory.
Like compliant. Yeah. Exactly. It is mandatory compared to standards. So in the three things that you mentioned, the three of them are under the first category, standards and frameworks. The ISO 27001, it is a standard because it is ISO, and ISO is the International Organization for Standardization. So obviously, any like number you see after the ISO word, then it is a standard. But when it comes to NIST, SOC 2, and so on, they are more like frameworks. even though NIST is the National Institute for Standards and Technologies, but worldwide, NIST is considered framework, and they have the famous framework in cybersecurity called CSF, the Cybersecurity Framework. And the difference between an ISO standard and another security framework is that an ISO standard is audited, but a security framework, not from ISO, it is assessed and not audited. So when we talk about ISO 27001, it is the global information security standards for ISMS. ISMS means Information Security Management System. And a management system can get audited and can be certified and so on. So you can get a certification under the ISO 17021 for the accreditation and 27006 for accredited for certification bodies accredited under an accreditation body. So this is a whole nother story. And when it comes to NIST CSF, the NIST CSF is a cybersecurity framework. It is also a risk-based framework similar to ISO 27001, and it has in its latest version, the CSF 2.0, it has 6 functions: govern, identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So like I said, the ISO 27001, it is the standard for information security management system. NIST CSF is a cybersecurity framework. And SOC 2, it is more like nowadays used as a framework in order to provide an assurance report under the AICPA trust service criteria. So to summarize, I often advise to use ISO to plan, NIST to implement, and if we'd like to add SOC 2, then to assure customers. And SOC 2 does not mean Security Operations Center. In this context, it means services and organizational controls, if I'm not mistaken. So we can map the controls to avoid duplication in case we have to implement the 3 of them. And we have organizations who provide ready mappings for the 3 of them. So all of these are powerful tools for integrated compliance or for integrated governance, risk, and compliance programs inside an organization.
Yeah. So you mean that we should like use them? It's preferable if we use them all the 3, like 3.
Yes, and more.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, now we're gonna go to the other side of the world, and we will talk about something related to companies also, but it's more about the beginning, which means that if a startup company, let's say, is looking to build cybersecurity department, what is your first piece of advice to them?
This is an interesting one because, like startups nowadays are probably the preferred victims of cyber attackers, because startups often overspend on tools before understanding their own risks, and due to their speedy progress, they usually forget the security side of the business. So if I can provide them with like a blueprint based on recommendations, I would say that there are like 3 months. The first 30 days, you have as a startup to do your asset inventory. You have to inventory your assets in order to identify your crown jewels. The crown jewels in this context means your most critical and mission critical assets in terms of business and the continuity of your own business as a startup. And then you can adopt like a 6 seed policies like access policy, change policy, vulnerability policy, incident response vendor, and secure development, because the majority of startups are proposing products, services, software, and so on. So they are developing things, but these things have to be developed based on a secure mindset, like we talked, the SSDLC, the secure by design, and so on. And then in the next 30 days, technical wise, you need to implement an EIM hygiene. EIM stands for Identity and Access Management, and this is extremely important for assuring access control, whether it is like logical or physical. You need also code scanning, CI/CD checks, and so on. In the 30 days after, you have to start thinking about implementing a cyber program based on like a framework such as NIST CSF or CES controls as an example in order to give simple, scalable starting points. Because remember, security is about culture before technology. And always remember that information security is people, process, and technology, because the majority of startups only focus on the technological aspect.
Yeah. So they don't care about the, let's say, the compliance and this stuff. Like they mostly care
Yes.
about the technical aspect, which means like how to establish server, how to, for example,
Exactly, yeah.
yeah. Well, we will arrive to the phase of the quiz, and imagine that we are in a coffee shop right now, and I
Okay.
will give you some, let's say, some choices and some verses, and you are going to tell me, or you are going just to pick one of the choices. But the condition is, if you choose two, let's say, choices at the same time, like both of them, in this case,
Okay.
you have to drink like a shot of coffee. Okay? So,
Okay.
the first one is privacy or security. What do you think, Em?
Honestly, I would choose security. But for the record, privacy is its inseparable twin. Because if you truly ensure security appropriately, then you are obviously doing somehow both.
Yeah. So you choose security.
Of course, yeah, security.
Good. Next one is threat hunting or incident response.
This is easy. I would go with threat hunting because proactive is much more important than reactive. Like the quote says, proactive beats reactive, because threat hunting is a proactive approach and incident response is a reactive approach.
Yeah. So you go with the first one.
Obviously, yeah, threat hunting.
Okay. So next one we have CISSP versus CISM. This one is tricky.
Oh. Oh,
Take coffee.
that's
So
a
in
nice
this
one.
case, you're gonna choose both
That's a
here.
nice one. No. In fact, I'm gonna go with the CISSP. These two are like have been like fighting each other for more years than I can remember. Like
Yeah.
especially people who have CISSP against people who have the CISM. Like they always be like, "Oh, mine is better," and the others are like, "Mine is better." But seriously, guys, the CISSP is much more better than the CISM. So CISSP is my absolute choice, like without thinking.
Okay. So CISSP. Next
Yes.
one is IT security or OT security. What do you think?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's definitely a tough one.
Take the coffee shots.
I think in this one I'm gonna take the coffee shot because
So,
IT security is like protecting top secret information systems. And OT security is about protecting lives because downtime might cost lives, like the human safety. So I cannot choose one of the two. Like I will choose both, but it depends. Like if you give me like a business context, I might choose something different. If you give me a life survival context, I will choose something different. But a general question, IT sec versus OT sec, it's hard. I will choose both, and this means I'm gonna have to have a
Yeah.
coffee shot.
enjoy. So, I have a last one here, which is
Okay.
red team or blue team. What do you choose?
Oh, easy. Purple team. Easy.
Purple doesn't exist here. So.
I'm gonna combine both of them. Purple. But if I am obliged to choose one of the two, I will go with the first one, red teaming, because it is super, super fun and it is extremely challenging, and I find it more challenging than blue teaming.
Yeah, so your choice is red team.
Yes.
Good. Well, so as we reach the end of our episode, unfortunately, of course, I would like to thank you, Amin, for joining me and for like sharing this kind of experience with us. So before we go, do you have like any final words or maybe piece of advice you would like to share, especially like for younger generation interested in starting a career in cybersecurity?
Okay, I have two pieces of advices, and the two of them are advice and at the same time a tip and trick. The first one, you need to learn how to learn. And try to listen to that again. Learn how to learn. Because in this industry, whatever you do, university, self-learning, trainings, courses, certifications, it doesn't matter. Anything you do, or if you do all of them, if you do not learn how to learn, you cannot excel in this field. That's the first thing. And the second thing, guys, always study and focus on the basics, like the IT and the computer science basics. Study networking, study computer science, study programming languages, study like operating systems, Linux, Windows, and so on. All of these things will give you the needed baseline in order to advance in the cyber industry. So the first advice is learn how to learn, and the second advice, study well the basics.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So thank you, Emin, again for this advice, and to all our listeners, thank you for tuning in and following our journey. We promise to bring you another episode, of course, soon with a new guest and more fascinating stories. Stay tuned. Salam.